Dr. Don Lynch, and I've written a blog about restoring kingdom leaders, beginning with the premise that restoring the fallen who are not leaders and restoring the fallen who are leaders is two different processes. Restoration is always our goal, and by restoration I mean complete restoration. The power of the cross and the life of the resurrection, the authority of the ascension of Jesus and his present involved intercession, represented by his kingdom leaders, guarantees that no matter what a person has done, no matter what's been done to them, no matter what hell has done or is doing in their lives right now, the work of the cross, the finished work of Christ, death, life, authority, present providence, it guarantees that the person, no matter what they've done, been done to them, or the work of hell against them, they can be so fully restored that it's as if what happened never happened. It's not denial that it happened, but it's the power of the cross to fully restore, and that the person can then stand in a place of being who they were created to be and doing what they were called to do. Now, this process is different for those not involved directly in kingdom leadership. By that kingdom leadership dynamics, I'm referring to the fivefold ministry of apostle, prophet, teacher, evangel, shepherd, these being the elders. Those are the eldering leaders, the fathering leaders. These are the ones Jesus bestowed upon the kingdom to prepare every kingdom citizen to function in his ecclesia, to mature them, and, of course, to restore them. And they are the ones involved in restoration. If it's an individual who is not in the fivefold, a process is personal. And simply restores them simply, but I should say, restores them back to the discipling process that is designed to produce the fullness of personal destiny. But if it's a kingdom leader, it becomes a twofold restorational issue. We have to restore them personally, and then we begin another process, or a process in tandem that continues past personal restoration to restore them into leadership function. During the time of restoration, they are not functioning as leaders. And the measurement of when and how much kingdom leadership they should be fulfilling is dependent upon that personal restoration, which includes their spouse if married, and children if they are head of household or a part of the parental process. They need personal restoration and kingdom leadership restoration. These are two different things and two different processes. Now, first of all, let's take apart what I'm talking about, that it is kingdom leaders or elders who are involved in restoration. That would be true of individuals who are not in kingdom leadership, but it is absolutely, even exclusionarily true of kingdom leaders. Kingdom leaders must be restored by kingdom leaders. You can't have people who are not kingdom leaders in the restoring a person, personally or in terms of leadership. They could be involved perhaps in the leadership, the personal restoration, but not in the leadership aspects. They could be dealing with a leader in his personal family, children, as a peripheral or also involved or blended, but it remains true. A kingdom leader needs to have kingdom leaders holding him accountable, her accountable, in the restoration process, in the same way they are holding them accountable as kingdom leaders. And so kingdom leaders are the ones to whom all of the kingdom citizens are accountable, and therefore it is kingdom leaders who provide strategy, oversight, and accountability, strategic accountability, in restoration of kingdom leaders. Once their personal restoration reaches a point at which we can rebuild trust and their kingdom leadership function continue again. Now remember, again, It is full restoration that we're after. So we're after a process that produces full restoration. We're not after a process that patches people up, binds up their wounds, or celebrates their scars. We're not looking to restore a person and then leave them with an identity flawed by previous sinfulness. Now, it is true that the sin a person commits before they're born of the Spirit, the sin they commit during the time of developing maturity, the sin they commit after they become leaders, these sin, those are different kinds of sin. And that's why you deal with a kingdom leader whose job, whose function is to make other people accountable for kingdom culture. You must deal with their restoration if and when there's a breach of kingdom culture principles, processes, and protocols. You must deal with them at a different level of accountability. They are more accountable because they're leaders than people who are not in fivefold leadership. Parenthetically, I'm not saying people who are not fivefold have no leadership. I'm simply separating eldering leaders from people who are not eldering leaders simply because the difference is vast, or it's marked. It's obvious, it's apparent, as it should be. Functions are different. And the functional differences and variations never become more apparent than when there's wounding, painfulness, scarring in the areas of greater influence. Leadership being influence. Influence is what has been damaged when a leader falls. Personally, he's damaged. Family damage, perhaps parenting damage. There's damage because the wages of sin is death, so things die that need to be brought back to life. Reset for full function. But when we talk about leadership, we're talking about influence. And that's why we have to deal with the breaches of trust in leaders in a different way because of the influence of those leaders is so much greater. Now, we know other people have influence, and a little leaven leavens the whole lump, a metaphoric way of saying that a little bit of yeast would spread if you inserted it into a lump of dough. You would end up with yeast spread. And so we deal with correction where there is breaches of kingdom culture principles in individuals in order to keep that from spreading or becoming normalized throughout the kingdom culture. So we deal with that personally, and so there is personal influence, but that's vastly different than the influence of a kingdom leader. These people have some oversight over things, seldom over that many people. They have oversight over themselves and their marriage and their family, and some oversight influence, of course, over things or processes, and perhaps over some people. But the fivefold, these are the dynamics of the leadership of Jesus. This is the representation of the King in the lives of people who are kingdom citizens. And when there's a breach, and there are, and there will be, minor, major, catastrophic, that breach must be dealt with according to the scope of its influence, the level of its devastation or death, and then the restoration needs to put that leader back into a position of function where his destiny is not destroyed, it's not even limited, but that person then functions as if that breach never happened. Now, I'm emphasizing that because most of the processes we are using do not restore the person in that way. They simply restore the person to leadership without dealing with his personal restoration, or we put him in a place where, well, we can trust him to do that, but we cannot trust him to do what he was doing previously. That's an inadequate restoration. What happens to that person because of other people, what that person does or what hell does in that person's life, cannot disqualify them from being who they're created to be and doing what they're called to do, because the power of the cross is greater. And so our process, both rigorous and vigorous, and it may be intense and it may take time, incremental periods of time must be applied. But the goal is to restore that person as if what happened didn't happen at all. And inside the kingdom, people need to understand that this is redemptive restoration.